All right, so we are making the clay owls. This is an example of one that's finished. However, it's an old owl, probably from 2010. Has been stored a lot and is broken and been glued. This is quite a large one. We're probably going to make ours a little bit smaller, like this guy.
Chubbier.
A little bit. I think they're cuter like that.
Why is this so good?
Well, they are going to hang on a wall. So we're going to put a piece of string in between here, and then it can hang. So that's why their head's like that. First thing you're going to do is you're going to get a hunk of clay here and scratch paper. And you and your partner are going to share a rolling pin. I'm going to push these guys out of the way so they don't get. When you are using a rolling pin in the kitchen, you use the edges. When you're using a rolling pin with clay, you just kind of put pressure here. So I think it's easier if you stand up and go back and forth. And you want to keep rotating this so that it doesn't get stuck to the table because, or the paper actually, the paper will pull out the moisture from the clay and it'll like actually stick to the clay and then you'll have to like peel off all the paper. So you want to keep flipping it, rotating it, moving it. You want this to be about 1/4 of an inch thick. You also want to look for, because this is terrible, this clay right here, air pockets. Do you see these little bubbles inside? While you're rolling, I'm going to get you guys a new batch of clay when you go to use them, when you go to make these guys, but you want to make sure that the air bubbles get popped, because what happens to air as it heats, do you see these? These are really super. What happens to air as it gets heated?
It bubbles.
What happens to the molecules of air as it gets heated?
It start to drop the clay.
No. You haven't talked about the molecules of water?
No.
I don't believe that. What happens when it freezes?
It's cold.
Well, it gets cold and the molecules shrink. So when it heats, the molecules
Spreads.
expand. So your air that's trapped in here as it goes into that kiln that gets up to thousands and thousands of degrees is going to expand, and if it's trapped inside the clay, guess what?
It'll pop.
It can pop. Or explode.
What's your obsession with them?
Okay. You're just going to set this aside because you are going to use the remainder of this clay here in a second. Like, I'm going to just chop that excess off. So now, this is where you're going to pick which side looks smoother. I say this side probably looks smoother. So, before I make the top here, I'm going to put, you are going to put your name, 2017, in your class code. I am just going to put 2017 on here in case there's a couple tragedies. In case something happens to somebody's owl, I have extras. In case something explodes.
Awesome. I can't wait to see that.
You're not going to see it. You would. It would just be broken in the kiln. Then, we said these are going to hang, right? You're going to take the top. Oh. Well, this clay is awful, that's why. And bend it over. When it needs to be attached, you always want to, I want this to stop moving.
You can never move.
You're going to score, which is roughing up the surface, and you're going to add slip. So I'm going to score this bottom part here. I'm going to take, slip is clay glue. It is also really just super wet clay.
We just used water.
Mud, I call it mud clay. You're going to take this roll and put it inside. You don't want to press it too tight on the roll because we're going to have to take it out. I'm just going to press it here. You want to make sure that this is able to roll. And mine's cracked an awful lot, so I'm just going to take the back of this guy and kind of like smooth them out because that looks bad. You can also just smooth it out with your fingers too. Okay. So now that I have that in there, I'm going to leave it while I build the rest of my owl. Let's give it some eyes. I'm going to do some huge eyes on this guy. You can do one of two things.
Angry bird eyes.
You can, I'm going to show you how to do the wings first, actually, and then I'm going to show you the eyes. All these pieces that we are making, for the most part, start with a circle piece or an oval piece that you are going to cut in half. So I could use these as huge eyes, or I could use these as little tiny wings, which I think is kind of cute. I'm going to do little tiny wings today.
Hey guys.
If you don't want to do your eyes that way, you can find kind of a straight edge, and it's a little bit more than a half circle, but you want to make sure that they're the same. So I'm going to set that on the clay. Come on. And trace around. Okay, now you want to smooth these edges so that they're not sharp, because once your clay is fired, it's going to get really sharp. I'm trying to think. This guy had like a sharp edge. You want to try to avoid that.
And not sure. Beak.
He looks angry. And I'm going to make mine a little bit sleepy. I chop it off the top. And score and slip. Score. Roughing up the surface. And the reason you do this is just to make sure there's a good attachment between the two pieces.
Robert.
You have to score one side of these. Add some slip. Press them in place. Now for the pupil, all I did was I took the back of my fork. You could probably use the end of this too, but maybe I'm going to have this guy looking over to the side. Press it in and spin. Make sure that your eyes are pointing the same way. If they're looking straight on, great. If they're looking over to the side, they need to be looking to the same side, not like one this way and one that way.
That would be awesome. Hey, at least he's not staring at you.
Okay. So we're going to have little tiny wings because I think it's super cute. I'm going to just put
A tooth.
a beak on here. I have this little piece, and I know that if I cut this off, so it's kind of like an elongated diamond shape. And I'm going to put on there. Oops. What'd I forget?
The glue. Or mud.
Slip. Okay. If you want your wings, if you want him to be like he's flying, you're going to put the longer edge outward, which I think is cute. If you want him to look like he's just kind of sitting on the tree branch, put him to the side. You can put him down further if you want. I like mine kind of out for this. You don't want them to be too far out. You want more than half of it to be attached to the body. So slip, slip. This guy's gonna go here. Oops. If you have areas, like, do you see how that, how the slip kind of seeped out underneath? That's an easy fix. All you do is scrape off your wooden needle tool and kind of clean it up. Okay. Last but not least, we need to give them some feet. So I am going to cut another circle. Out of this clay that I already have. I'm going to cut this in half. And then I'm going to cut little triangle shapes into the bottom, 2 of them. Score. Now they could be close together like these guys are, or they could be like stretched out. I'm going to stretch these guys out a little bit further like he's swooping down to catch something. I don't know why my owl all of a sudden is a he, but he is. I think his name's Herman. Not sure.
Herman.
His friends call him Herm. So now you have your owl constructed. If you want to add textures to him, there's a few that you can do. I'm going to clean up this little bit of slip right here. You can, first off, I would go through and smooth things out. Like, I'm still going to smooth out the top of his head a little bit. This I left. A little bit of cracks, not a big deal, but if you had those big cracks, you're going to want to clean those up some. If you want to add like feathers to the body, if you look at your clay tool or your wooden needle tool here, it's one side, if not both sides, are flattened out. You can simply press it in to give the impression of feathers. You do not, listen to my words, you do not want to press too far down. If you press all the way down, when it bakes, it's going to be too thin and it's going to put a nice big crack in your clay. It might even break apart. So you don't want to stab, 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 stab. If you want texture on his feet, similar to that, you can do it. You can do that, but it's just little dots. They're not actually stabbing. I'm more like scuffing the surface to give it some texture. Wings or the crown of the owl, you can do fish scales or feathers, which is just the letter U and U. And below it, you would do the same thing, meeting in the middle of the one above it. Whatever you do on one wing, obviously you need to do on the other wing to make it symmetrical.